welcome to Friday Reads, where we help you find your next read. My name is Jill.
And I'm Julie, and this week we are talking about popular authors and the books they write. So I'll turn it over to Jill to kick us off.
So my first choice was Harlan Coben. He's an American writer. He wrote over 30 mystery novels and thrillers. The plots of his novels often involve the resurfacing of unresolved and misinterpreted events in the past, murders, or fatal accidents that have multiple twists. So twisty, murdery stuff. This is The Boy from the Woods. This was published in 2020. He has a more current book, but is highly circulating, so you might have to wait for it. In this one, a man known as Wild is a mystery to everyone, including himself. Decades ago, he was found as a boy living feral in the woods, with no memory of his past. After the police concluded an exhaustive hunt for the child's family, which was never found, he was turned over to the foster system. Now, 30 years later, Wild doesn't know where he comes from, and he's back to living in the woods on the outskirts of town, content to be an outcast, comfortable only outdoors, preferably alone, and with few deep connections to other people. When a local girl goes missing, famous TV lawyer Hester Krimstein, with whom Wild shares a tragic connection, asks him to use his unique skills to help find her. Meanwhile, a group of ex-military security experts arrive in town, and when another teen disappears, the case's impact expands far beyond the borders of the peaceful suburb. Wild must return to the community where he has never fit in, and where the powerful are protected even when they harbor secrets that could destroy the lives of millions. Secrets that Wild must uncover before it's too late. This is a standalone novel. His latest book is Win. Harlan also has books that are part of his series, the Myron Bolitar and the Mickey Bolitar series. So those are detectives, I guess. And so that's Harlan Coben.
My first pick today is Lisa Wingate, and I have the book called Dandelion Summer. This was published back in 2011. It's in the Blue Sky Hill series. The first 3 books in that series are A Month of Summer, The Summer Kitchen, and Beyond Summer, and then this is the 4th one, Dandelion Summer. And in this book, Epi Salerno has been tossed around like a dandelion seed on the wind. Now at 16, she must move to a low-rent side of Blue Sky Hill and work where she's not wanted in an upscale home on the hill. She's been hired to stay with an older gentleman in the afternoons. He's widowed and suffering from heart trouble, and Norman just wants to be left alone. But in Epi's presence, Norman discovers a mystery. Deep in his mind lie memories of another house, another life, and a woman who saved him. So as summer comes, 2 residents from different worlds will journey through a turbulent past and find that with an unexpected road trip through sleepy southern towns comes life-changing friendship and clues to a family secret hidden for a lifetime. You're probably familiar with Lisa Wingate. She's the New York Times bestselling author of over 30 novels, including the bestsellers The Book of Lost Friends and Before We Were Yours, which remained on the New York Times bestseller list for over 2 years and has sold over 3 million copies. She is a Goodreads Choice Award winner for historical fiction and a Southern Book Prize winner. And she was inspired to become a writer by a first-grade teacher who said she expected to see Lisa's name in a magazine one day. She writes novels in Texas, where she is part of the Wingate clan of storytellers. And of all the things she treasures most about being a writer, she enjoys connecting with people, both real and imaginary, the most. So, Lisa Wingate.
Cool. My next pick is Ellen Hildebrand. She writes beach reads. She lives in Nantucket, which is the setting for some of her novels. Her newest novel, Golden Girl, is her 27th novel. So if you read her books in order, you'll notice the stakes get higher, the younger generation is getting older, and protagonists who were once mapping out their lives are taking stock of how it went. So that's kind of neat. Kind of follows her age, maybe, while she goes. 28 Summers was published in 2020. It has been described as an old-fashioned romantic comedy. Before Mallory Blessing dies, she tells her son Link to look for an envelope in her desk drawer. On the front of the envelope are 2 words, "Please call." And inside is a phone number. Link follows his mother's instruction and is shocked to find himself in touch with Jake McLeod, the husband of the front runner in the upcoming presidential election. We learn that Mallory and Jake have enjoyed a secret yearly rendezvous for 28 summers through marriage, kids, jobs, and Jake's wife's political career. Why the two haven't been able to make it as a real couple becomes clear as the story unfolds, but still we root for them, visit after visit, knowing how the story will end and hoping we're wrong. 28 Summers listed as the first book in a series, so there could be more of these characters coming, although Hildebrand has reported that she plans on retiring from writing beach reads in 2024, so she'll have to get working.
My second pick is Jeffrey Archer and his book Turn a Blind Eye, which is just published in 2021 and is currently in our new collection. It's often been said that Jeffrey Archer's own story would make an international bestseller. In addition to being an author, he was a former politician whose political career ended in conviction and imprisonment for fabrication and perverting the course of justice. He has also served as a member of the British Parliament and a deputy chairman of the Conservative Party. So he's an interesting fella. And the book I picked is the third installment in the gripping story of Detective Inspector William Warwick. Newly promoted to detective inspector, this man is tasked with a dangerous new line of work to go undercover and expose crime of another kind, corruption at the heart of the Metropolitan Police Force. So as the undercover officer starts to draw threads together in this case, he realizes that the corruption may go deeper still, and more of his colleagues than he first thought might be willing to turn a blind eye. This author is published in 97 countries in more than 33 languages. He is firmly established as one of the world's best-selling authors, with international sales passing 275 million copies. He's the only author ever to have been a #1 bestseller in fiction 19 times, short stories 4 times, and nonfiction with this book, The Prison Diaries. So Jeffrey Archer and Turn a Blind Eye, third book in the Detective Inspector William Warwick series.
These authors have really done some amazing things.
I know. When you start looking into their bios and you go, holy smokes.
No wonder people like them. My next one is C.J. Box. Charles James Box Jr. is an American author of more than 20 novels. He's author of the Joe Pickett series, as well as several standalone novels and a collection of short stories. This long range was published in 2020. It's number 20 in the Joe Pickett series, so there are a lot of books about this dude. Joe Pickett is a game warden and law enforcement officer based in Wyoming. Reviewers have given this book 4.4 stars on Goodreads and described the novel as a Western thriller. So, when Joe Pickett is asked to join the rescue efforts for a victim of a startling grizzly attack, he reluctantly leaves his district behind. One survivor of the grizzly's rampage tells a bizarre story, but just as Joe begins to suspect the attack is not what it seems, he is brought home by the emergency on his own turf. Someone has targeted a prominent local judge, shooting at him from seemingly impossible distance. While the judge was not hit, his wife was severely wounded, and it is up to Joe to find answers and the shooter. The search for the would-be assassin becomes personal when Joe's best friend, Nate Romanowski, just as he's adjusting to the arrival of his first child, falls under suspicion for the crime. It's a race against the clock as Joe tries to clear Nate's name and identify the real shooter, all while deciphering the grisly encounter. Beset by threats both man-made and natural, the two men must go to great lengths to keep their loved ones safe. So, C.J. Box.
My next pick is David Baldacci, and I have the book Memory Man. David Baldacci has been writing since childhood, when his mother gave him a lined notebook in which to write down his stories. Much later, he thanked her for being the spark that ignited his writing career, and she revealed that she gave him the notebook to keep him quiet, quote, because every mom needs a break now and then, but she sparked his writing career. He published his first book, Absolute Power, in 1996. A feature film came after that, with Clint Eastwood as its director and star. He has since published more than 40 novels for adults and 7 novels for young readers. So the book I have today is Memory Man. It's the first book to feature the character Amos Decker, whose life changed forever twice. The first time was on the gridiron. A big towering athlete, he was the only person from his hometown of Burlington ever to go professional. But his career ended before it had a chance to begin. On his very first play, a violent helmet-to-helmet collision knocked him off the field for good and left him with an improbable side effect. He can never forget anything. The second time was at home nearly 2 decades later. Now a police detective, Decker returned from a stakeout one evening and entered a nightmare. His wife, young daughter, and brother-in-law had been murdered. His family destroyed, their killer's identity as mysterious as the motive behind the crime, and unable to forget a single detail from that horrible night, Decker finds his world collapsing around him. He leaves the police force, loses his home, winds up on the street, taking piecemeal jobs as a private investigator when he can. So check this book out to see how this whole story ends up working out. And like I said, first book to feature that character, Amos Decker. David Baldacci. My brother loves his books.
So my next pick is Kyrin Hannah. I feel like she's like a new popular author. Like she's written over 20 novels, so definitely not new to writing, but she's gaining in popularity and more people are learning about her and finding her books. She seems to write a lot of historical fiction kind of thing, family drama kind of stuff. So, and this one is Night Road. This is the one we had on our shelf. For the past 18 years, Jude Faraday has put her children's needs above her own, and it shows. Her twins, Mia and Zach, are bright and happy teenagers. When Lexi Bale moves into their small, close-knit community, no one is more welcoming than Jude. Lexi, a former foster child with a dark past, quickly becomes Mia's best friend. Then Zach falls in love with Luzecki, and the three become inseparable. Jude does everything to keep her kids on track for college and out of harm's way. It has always been easy until senior year of high school. Suddenly she's at a loss. Nothing feels safe anymore. Every time her kids leave the house, she worries about them. On a hot summer night, her worst fears come true. One decision will change the course of their lives. In the blink of an eye, the Faraday family will be torn apart and Lexi will lose everything. In the years that follow, each must face the consequences of that single night and find a way to forget or the courage to forgive. So, yeah, Night Road. Kyrin Hannah, one to watch.
My fourth pick is William Kent Krueger and his book, Ordinary Grace. This was published in 2013. This author writes a mystery series set in the North Woods of Minnesota. His protagonist is Cork O'Connor, the former sheriff of Tamarack County and a man of mixed heritage, part Irish, part Ojibwe. His work has received a number of awards, including the Minnesota Book Award and the Friends of American Writers Prize. His 18th book in that series, called Lightning Strike, will be published later this month. The book I chose today, Ordinary Grace, received the Edgar Award given by the Mystery Writers of America in recognition for the best novel published in that year. And the companion novel to Ordinary Grace, This Tender Land, was published in September 2019 and spent nearly 6 months on the New York Times bestseller list. In fact, his last 9 novels were all on the New York Times bestsellers list. So, in Ordinary Grace, it's New Bremen, Minnesota, 1961. The twins were playing their debut season, ice-cold root beers were selling out at the soda counter of Halderson's drugstore, and hot stuff comic books were a mainstay on every barbershop magazine rack. It was a time of innocence and hope for a country with a new young president. But for 13-year-old Frank Drum, it was a grim summer in which death visited frequently and assumed many forms: accident, nature, suicide, murder. So told from Frank's perspective 40 years after that fateful summer, Ordinary Grace is a brilliantly moving account of a boy standing at the door of his young manhood, trying to understand a world that seems to be falling apart around him. It's an unforgettable novel about discovering the terrible price of wisdom and the enduring grace of God. William Kent Krueger was raised in the Cascade Mountains of Oregon and briefly attended Stanford U before being kicked out for radical activities. After that, he logged timber, worked construction, tried his hand at freelance journalism, and eventually ended up researching child development at the University of Minnesota, and now loves residing in St. Paul, thus this connection to all his Minnesota locations in his books. So this one sounded interesting, and I have to admit I haven't read his books, but Ordinary Grace and This Tender Land both went on my bucket list when I looked into him.
I have This Tender Land checked out right now. I hope I read it. I didn't realize he's from Minnesota. That's cool. So my next pick is Lee Child, which is actually a pen name. His real name is Jane Stover Grant, known by his pen name Lee Child. He's a British author who writes thriller novel and is best known for his Jack Reacher novel series. The books follow the adventures of a former American military policeman, Jack Reacher, who wanders the United States. So this one, The Sentinel, the title's way down here. So popular this guy is, just that is so The Sentinel, published in 2020, is the 25th book in the Jack Reacher series. As always, Reacher has no particular place to go and all the time in the world to get there. One morning, he ends up in a town near Pleasantville, Tennessee, and there's nothing pleasant about this place. In broad daylight, Reacher spots a hapless soul walking into an ambush. It was 4 against 1, so Reacher intervenes with his own trademark brand of conflict resolution. The man he saves is Rusty Rutherford, an unassuming IT manager, recently fired after cyber attack locked up the town's data, records, information, and secrets. Rutherford wants to stay put, look innocent, and clear his name. Reacher is intrigued. There's more to the story. The bad guys who jumped Rutherford are part of something serious and deadly, involving a conspiracy, a cover-up, and a murder, all centered on a mousy little guy in a coffee-stained shirt who had no idea what he's up against. Rule 1, if you don't know what the trouble you're in, keep Reacher by your side. So, the 25th Jack Reacher novel. That's pretty impressive.
And my last pick is Danielle Steel and her book, Accidental Heroes. By 19, Danielle Steel had written her first book. She promised herself that if she got it to sell, she'd be content, prepare to quit writing, focus on her family. Well, that novel sold in a week, and she still hasn't been able to quit. She has written close to 200 books. She continues to write. She's best known for her romance novels. She's the 4th best-selling fiction author of all time, with over 800 million copies of her books sold. Her books have been translated into 43 languages, and it's been recently said that she releases 7 novels a year. She's very disciplined. She writes in her home office. Most of that time that's in Paris, but sometimes she's at her home in San Francisco, where she writes on her 1946 Olympia Standard typewriter, which she's nicknamed Ollie. So my book pick today of hers is Accidental Heroes from 2018. On a beautiful May morning at New York's JFK Airport, 2 planes have just departed for San Francisco. One a 757, another a smaller Airbus. At a security checkpoint, TSA agent Bernice Adams finds a postcard of the Golden Gate Bridge bearing an ambiguous, perhaps ominous message. Her supervisor dismisses her concerns, but Bernice calls security and soon Ben Waterman arrives. A senior Homeland Security agent, still grappling with guilt after a disastrous operation in which hostages were killed, Ben too becomes suspicious of this postcard. Who left the postcard behind? Which flight is that person on? And what exactly does that message mean? As Ben begins to scan passenger manifests, his focus turns to the Airbus with Helen Smith as its senior pilot. Helen's military service and her tenure with the airline have been exemplary, but her husband's savage death in Iraq was more than anyone should bear, leaving her widowed with 3 children. There's also a major film star on board. So is an off-duty pilot who has just lost his 40-year career. And there's a distraught father traveling with the baby son he has abducted from his estranged wife. So sifting through data and relying on instinct, Ben Waterman becomes convinced that someone on Helen's plane is planning something terrible. And he's right. Passengers, crew, and experts on the ground become heroes out of necessity to try to avert tragedy at the 11th hour. So Danielle Steele's book, Accidental Heroes. So not so much of a romance novel in this one. She sometimes deviates. My mom was a big fan of Danielle Steele's books. So popular author.
Well, we helped you find something to read, and if you pick one of these authors, you will have lots to read.
As they have written many books. We should have added up the total between all of them and see what we'd come up with. But thank you for watching. Next week, we're back to our friend Dewey and the 800s in the Dewey Decimal System. We're almost coming to the end of the Dewey Decimal System.
Almost the end.
Like and share this video. Comment if you've read a favorite book by any of the authors we mentioned today. Let us know. We love to hear from you. Thanks, everybody.
Bye.